Peace and love, freedom and decolonization to all African people on the continent and in the diaspora. My name is Kabbalah, member of the African Continental Unity Party, ACUP, which is a Pan-African movement that is aiming to rebuild Africa as a global power base. Well, today we're coming with our next episodes on the series that we are doing regarding the process or the steps that we must go through as African people to gain our complete liberation that will put us in a better position to manage our states, to manage our nation, and to manage our future and destiny as African people. If we cannot complete these steps, if we cannot satisfy these steps or this process of total liberation, we will remain in the paper independence or paper liberation that we are enjoying now as African people, but at the same time the wealth of Africa is plundered in a manner that we cannot imagine every single day. Now, precedingly we spoke about rebelling the status quo as the first step to gain the total liberation. And secondly, we spoke about the restoration of confidence. Today we are talking about reconditioning of the mind. These steps are very, very important. These steps constitute what is called taking slavery out of us. The reason is we have been into slavery for a long time, and slavery has been inserted in us through some scientific processes. And the fact that we were declared independence in 1960, or the fact that we were declared liberated or free in the context of our diaspora, it doesn't mean that we have been completely freed, because as we said from the beginning, you can take a slave out of slavery, but it is only a slave who can take slavery out of himself. Dr. John Henry Clark put it in a better word. He said, only a slave can abolish slavery, because if somebody is sitting on your back, exploiting you and torturing you, it's up to you to take a better position to balance the one that is sitting on your back. And the right position to take is to stand straight up. So it is our duty to embark in this process of taking slavery out of us as African people, so that we can get to the state where we are now able to manage successfully our nations, to manage our resources, and to manage our destiny as African people. Because as we're speaking right now, even though we call ourselves free and independent, the resources of Africa is in the hands of Europeans, and the destiny of Africa is designed and decided by Europeans, and we are just willingly participating in that process of our own destruction, because our mind has been conditioned to act like that. That's why we're talking on this third episode about reconditioning our mind. To begin, I will give you a very simple example how you can condition the mind of something, of somebody, or even of an animal. Mind is a very, very powerful thing. You can condition it, you can recondition it, but you must understand in what mode your mind operates. For example, when you take a chicken, you bring a new chicken to your house. That chicken does not know your house. That chicken is not used to your house. And if you release the chicken to go and feed itself as normally chicken do, the chicken will go forever. It will never gonna come back. I'm sure you've heard me talking about this before. Now, if you want to condition that chicken and its mindset, you must put that chicken in a cage, right? You must put the chicken in a cage somewhere around there and give it some crumbs, some seed for about 3 to 4 days. And after 4 days, I'm sure I can bet you can release the chicken. It will go, but in the evening it will come back to the house where it was held captive in the cage. And that's a reality of us as African people. For more than 400 years we were conditioned, our mind Our minds were conditioned to look at the white man as a superior creature who was next to God, and therefore for us to access God, we had to go through the image of white man. We had to look at the white man as the one who was able to decide on what we had to eat, what we had to wear, what we had to drink, and all those kind of stuff during the colonialism and slavery. We had to look at a white man as the bringer of civilization, not as a bringer of warfare and destruction. We had to look at a white man as a superior and look at ourselves as animals, and then look at him as the one who will help us to come out of our animal states and to be godlike, as white man is godlike. So this is the condition of our mind for more than 400 years. So you cannot expect people who are coming out of 400 years of enslavement to automatically be totally free and manage Africa successfully. No, there are steps that must be taken for these people to recuperate what has been destroyed in them. So these people must restore confidence. These people must rebel against the order which has humiliated them. And thirdly, as we're speaking out, these people must be reconditioned in their mind to think differently and to act differently. As we said earlier, as people think, so they are. All the thinkers have agreed on that, and there's no other universal truth than that. So the reality of African today is a projection of our mind in most cases. We know that the Western plays a very important role in the condition that Africans are going through currently, but we are also fully participating because our mind has been conditioned to think as colonized, as slaves, as servants of white men. Because their ultimate goal of white supremacy is to make black people eternal servants of the Western society. And there have been a lot of works that have been done to condition us to accept that reality. You must understand that Africans who were taken out of Africa were rebellious, were resistant, because they knew who they were. They were physically forced to do things, but their minds were still free. Their minds were still African because they could remember the day that they were in Africa as a free people, the day that they were in Africa as a kings, as a princes. Many of those who were taken in Africa, taken out of Africa, were princes, were princes and princesses, were the people who knew their culture, knew their traditions, knew their spirituality. They knew how they worshipped their creator. They knew themselves. So these people were always rebelling against the oppression of slavery. So there had to be a new generation that the white men had to create, a generation that didn't know anything about Africa, a generation that thought that Africa is a jungle where black people are jumping through the trees as a monkeys with the bones in their nose, as Leo Muhammad put it. And this is the image now that was created in the mind of the new generation of Africa after they had put to death all these Africans who were taken out of Africa and forced them to produce kids in numbers. And these kids now were taken away from their parents, were given white man's name, were given white man's language, which is very significant for the development of a kid, right? And then we're told different stories about Africa, that Africa is a jungle. You were uncivilized, we're like animals, you were barbarian, you were barbarous, so to say. And we came to Africa to give you civilization, to give you Christianity, and to make you closer to us as white men. So this is a scientific deep work of conditioning of the mindset of African people. So you cannot expect people out of this condition suddenly to be fully free in their minds. That is why we talk about taking slavery out of ourselves now. Even though we were declared free, we were taken out of slavery, but the slavery itself inside of us, it is our own initiative and our own work to take it outside of us so that we can live, act, think like a free people who are in charge of their own reality, who decide what happens tomorrow for them and make that happen. So there has to be another work, another generation to recondition now the mindset of Africans to accept the reality that we are created in the image of the Creator. We have built civilization before the white man wore shoes, lived in the house that had the window, right? We had civilizations already in Africa. We had kings and queens in Africa. We knew God in Africa before that white man came out of his cave. So why do we have today to look at ourselves as the children of Westerners and have to depend on them to make important decisions of our lives? This is unacceptable. So we need to recondition our mind again. And it takes only one generation to change the reality of an entire people. It takes one generation, 20 years old, to change the reality of the entire people. And that is a work of education. A true education in Africa should be aiming at reconditioning of the mindset of African people before they can teach us about anything else, before they can teach us about science, about physics, about mathematics, because those are the tools that work according to the dominant law. If the dominant law in our mind is white supremacy, then whatever science we will study will contribute to the law of white supremacy. Let me give you this example. Have you seen that most of Africans, when they are employed in white-owned institutions, they are doing great, tremendously great. They are scientists, they are engineers, they invent machines, they create things, technology-wise, they do great. Medical-wise, they do great. But bring these all Africans, doctors in New York, bring them to Nigeria, give them Nigeria to lead, give them Congo, give them South Africa. It becomes a failed state as we are now in Africa. Why do we succeed when we work in other people's institutions and fail when we work on our own as African people? It tells you the condition of the mindset. Because as we argued in a preceding video, that we enjoy forced labor and we despise hard work, because our mind is conditioned to always serve other people than working for ourselves. We have African people who spend a lot of money to travel, to cross the Mediterranean water, to go in Spain, while the same money can be used in Africa as investment capital and build a business. Why? Because we have been accustomed. The new culture of colonialism created was to make us people who must always serve other people than to work for ourselves. That is why we produce the result that we are producing today. So what is needed now is the work of reconditioning of our mind as African people. Even though we shout every day, revolution, change, liberation, what is the state of your mind? What is your mind set on? What kind of values do you really accept Africa as it is and look at Africa as a beautiful? Or your aim is to get money and go and live with white people. That's what most of our so-called leaders do, right? That's why they get sick, they go and treat themselves into white-owned hospitals. They send their kids into white-owned universities. They don't even trust their own institutions in Africa. It tells you much about the confidence as we spoke precedingly. So, reconditioning of the mind of African people is the job that we are supposed to be doing today, especially with our youngest one, so that tomorrow we have a new generation of Africans who have a different mindset and who do something differently from what is being done today. Because many people believe, especially in the Western perspective, they believe that you can change the society by building lots of jails that will force people to do certain things. But us in Africa, we believe that we can change the society by influencing the mindset of the people, because what we see in the society, bad or good, is the outcome of the people's mindset. As people think, so is their society. Remember how we said it in the beginning. So if you want to change the society, try to change the mindset of the people. For us to act today as slaves, willing slaves, who are ready to serve the whites' imperialism, there had to be a work of transforming our mindset, of changing our mindset. That is why in the Congo or somewhere in other places in Africa, people were destroyed. You know what King Leopold II of Belgium did in the Congo? Parents were brutalized, destroyed in the presence of their kids. That was to change the mindset of the kids, to believe that white man is the master. Even our parents are not greater than the white man, so we need to obey to the white man rather than obey to our parents. And that has created a fear of imperialism that we see in Africa today. Though we know the truth, but we are unable to act because our mindset is set on that mode of fear of white men as the master. So we need to change this reality, and we cannot change it by force. We only are able to change it through the education. So if you want to participate in our program through the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy, where we are training new leaders in Africa, we are preparing a new class of leaders that will take over Africa in the next 10 years. The Africa that you see today is not the Africa that we will see at that time. And that cannot happen by wish, that cannot happen by prayer, that cannot happen, by chance. It must happen only when we are getting involved in getting that reality happening, by teaching, transforming, training, and producing a new class of leaders who will then think differently and act differently from what we see, from the destruction that we see in Africa today, from the desolation that we see in Africa today, from the leadership position. So should you wish to be part of our training program, should you have some skills that you want to share with the young people for the purpose of the transforming or reconditioning of the mindset, please join us. We must understand that this cannot happen, in closing, this cannot happen through democracy, through, as I said, prayer or something else. It must happen through decisive measure put in place. You see, for me to be able to speak French, I do speak French better than I speak English. I was beaten at school. I was punished every time I spoke my mother's tongue because they wanted to condition me to be a little French, or to be acting like a little French, a little Negro who identifies himself to France more than he identifies himself to his ancestors who were Africans. You see, that was conditioning of our mind. I was punished, I was beaten every time I spoke African language. So I was forced to speak French language. Do you think that we can change this reality with our youngest one by prayer, or with the democracy, or with the relying on their willingness to change? No. There must be some kind of institutional structures put in place in Africa that will make sure that things are followed so that we can get the result that we want. So there must be some kind of sacrificial generation that is forced to act in different way in order to change their mindset, so that we from there can get a different result. So this work of reconditioning, we must understand the price it comes with, and we must be willing to pay that price to get Africa that we want. So, as I said, the details in the description, should you want to join us in any way to get trained or educated, or to, firstly, what we do is to educate you, then re-educate you as an African person. So should you wish to join us for that purpose, or to join us as one of the facilitators in the program that we have at the Free-Minded Pan-African Academy, please join us. Let us build this together. Send us an email, and together we'll be able to achieve the reconditioning of the mindset of the Africans, so that we can get the Africa that we want in the way that we want it, towards the direction that we want Africa to go. Peace and love, freedom and decolonization to all African people. If you have two shoes, please sell one and buy a sword, because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is not on the streets, is in the mind. Is how we change, we condition our mind. So see you on the next episode that is coming, where we talk about taking charge, freedom and decolonization. See you again.